Welcome, STEM for Girls members. I'm Kaitlyn Breon, a student in Deer Lake, and as a junior leader today, I'm so excited to be interviewing Lesley Parrott, an executive business partner and entrepreneur. So let's get started. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me today, first of all. So I am Lesley Parrott, and I am the executive business partner at MISA here in St. John's, Newfoundland. So for those of you who aren't familiar with MISA, we are a smart thermostat company. We're about 120 people here in St. John's, and we have some remote workforce actually all over the globe right now. So we sell in Canada and the US, but we have expansion plans, and we'll be going into really exciting markets like Europe really soon. So it's a great place to work, a great culture. We've just been named one of Atlantic Canada's top employers, so I'm really proud about the work that I do at MISA. Outside of my work at MISA, I am a mom. So I'm a mom of an 8.5-year-old girl who is also a huge lover of STEM. I'm very active as a volunteer in the local community and all across Atlantic Canada. So I am the co-chair of an organization called Women in Communications and Technology. It's a national nonprofit, and I co-chair the Atlantic chapter. I also do volunteer work with an organization called Futurepreneur. So I help a lot of young entrepreneurs between 18 and 35 start their own businesses and scale their own businesses. And that kind of leads into what my academic background is. So I did an undergraduate degree in business. I did that at MUN, a Bachelor of Commerce. And then I did a master's degree also in business. And I started that at MUN and finished it in Copenhagen, which is in Denmark, which led to, I guess, my first real career that bridged both business and technology. I started my career as an accountant before going back to do a master's degree and realized that it wasn't really quite for me, although I was always really good at math and was told if you're good at math, you become an engineer or an accountant. So I knew I needed something a little more. And in my master's program in Europe, I heard about the term innovation. So pretty commonplace word used right now. Back in my day, so graduating master's degree back in the early 2000s, it wasn't quite as common. And it really interested me. So I took a lot of courses in it, which led me to a career in Toronto. So I worked in innovation management at the head office of Canadian Tire Corp and got to do a lot of things like product development and kind of bridge the gap between product development and marketing. So that's kind of what led me to my career in tech today, which isn't a traditional technical role that I hold, but I do have some technical background, so I can kind of understand and play in both fields. When it comes to a skill that has really helped me most in my career, both as an accountant, then in innovation management, now in the type of role that I have, is that I'm really curious. I've always been really, really curious. I've always had lots of questions. I've always asked lots of questions. I really always want to understand how things work and why people make the decisions that they make. So I say that that's kind of, combined with just an overall growth mindset that I have. I love to learn. I love to learn new things. I love to read and listen to podcasts. And it really helps me evolve in the field of innovation and evolve when it comes to, adapting to how quickly the technology industry and STEM related careers evolve nowadays.
That's awesome. Thank you. So you mentioned you've done a Bachelor of Commerce degree. Yes?
Right.
Did you always know you wanted to go into business even when you were in high school, or how did you make that decision?
No, I always wanted to be a doctor. As a young kid, I wanted to be a pediatrician. I think I must have gone to a pediatrician when I was a kid and really liked him or her, and then decided it had to be the career path for me, which then turned into pharmacy, actually, as I was in high school. And as I said, I was always really strong at math. So I was the kid that was, put ahead a year in math and did all of these crazy math competitions and whatnot. And naturally, people just started to tell me that I should consider accounting, of all things. I don't know why. I guess counting money, I don't know. And I was impressionable at the time. I thought, well, this is what people are telling me to do. Apparently you do it and you get a good job right away and you don't have to go to school for 10 to 12 years. So it seems like the logical thing to do. And so I did a commerce degree and I did start as an accountant, just like kind of all of the advice that had been given. Now, though, when I look back on that and I think, what was it about medicine or pharmacy that attracted me? Why did I want to do that, and what led me down the path I'm on now? And I like to say back then I wanted to diagnose problems. I wanted to diagnose illness. And now I diagnose business problems. And it's my strength. I operate with a very strategic mindset. So I like to go in and look for challenges and determine solutions to those challenges. So I guess I'm kind of using my own my aspirations to be a doctor, but in a different sense, different type of diagnosis.
Yes, and that's amazing that you can recognize that and that your career now definitely has some underlying similarities with what you wanted as a kid. That's
It
really
might
cool.
be a stretch, but I'm trying.
No, I can definitely see that correlation. That's really cool.
Thank you.
I guess kind of bridging from what you did in university to your career now, how did you end up in tech? Was it a similar situation? You were kind of advised to go there, or was it kind of trial and error with jobs, or did you discover that in university?
So I think the seed got planted when I started to do some courses in innovation, and I worked in innovation management because I got to work with a lot of engineers and product developers and various people in different, technical competencies, technical backgrounds. But when I moved from Toronto back to St. John's, over 10 years ago now, I was at a point in my life where I was thinking about becoming a mother and settling down and all of those things, and felt inclined to come back and be around family, and Newfoundland was kind of drawing me back more and more every time I came to visit. But at the time, the oil and gas industry was really, really, really kind of booming here in the province. And I immediately joined the industry. It was, the place to be and the best place to use my skills at the time. After becoming a mom, though, while I was on my maternity leave, I got to think a lot about what really energized me, what types of roles I had had in the past that really, I was really excited to wake up in the morning and go to work. And it was always that kind of new product development, that understanding consumer wants and needs and desires, and being part of a team that worked on developing those types of things. And I thought, the tech industry is now starting to boom in Newfoundland, and I might be early to the game, but I think that's going to be the next big player. And it's where I can combine my strengths with that passion for the type of work that I had been involved in before. And so at MISA right now, I get to do exactly that. It's taking all of those skills that I learned in university and in the early stages of my career, and combining that with, the experience that I've had in seeing a big industry grow and thrive right here in Newfoundland and Labrador, and being part of a bigger movement now that I think is attracting more people and more talent and more investment and all of those things that are so important to creating a thriving economy.
Definitely. For anyone here on this chat or on this call who's unsure what MISA is, could you give us a little breakdown of what they are and what they do, just for anyone who doesn't know?
For sure. Yeah, so a really exciting company founded by two brothers who at the time were both in their 20s. One just finishing university, finishing an engineering degree at MUN, and the other one who had just finished an engineering degree in Nova Scotia. Both of whom were really passionate about fighting climate change, and saw a gap in the market. They thought, you know what? We have so many homes here in Newfoundland and so many homes across Canada and pockets of the US where we have baseboard thermostats, and we don't have smart thermostats to control those baseboard thermostats or baseboard heaters. And so, if you think about a product like many of you might have in your home, a smart home automation like Nest, those types of tools are great for your locking your doors and turning on your lights and turning off your lights, but they won't control your baseboard heaters. And that is the biggest waste of energy in your entire home. So the biggest impact we can have through smart home automation, with reducing your home heating bills and also reducing your carbon footprint, is to schedule and control the use of your baseboard thermostat. So these two brothers got together and said, we're going to fix it. We're going to come up with a solution, and we're going to sell it across the globe. And it's going to be this big, huge thing. Two big, massive visionaries, very, very, very smart guys. And so they got a small team together and, put together some product design. Nothing had even actually been commercialized yet. And they were like, we're just going to put it up for pre-sale. See if people are actually interested in it. So before it was even developed, when it was merely just an inkling of an idea, they pre-sold thousands of units online. So then they thought, okay, well, now we got to make it.
That's a good sign.
Right? We have to make it. And so that was the start. That was back in just before 2018. 2018 was the first kind of initial launch of the first sale of the thermostat. And here we are at the beginning of 2023. We're going into the third baseboard product. We have a Misa AC and heat pump product. We have an in-floor product, and we have about 3 new products on our roadmap. As I said, we're selling all across Canada, all across the US. We have employees all across Canada and the US. And now we're heading into international sales, some really great, exciting partnerships coming up. And we've exceeded 120 people, all while keeping this really cool culture where everyone just kind of comes to work as they are, passionate about the cause, high energy. We get together every Friday and have pizza together. We are exactly what you would kind of see in some of the movies. We have the foosball tables and the pool tables and the gaming consoles and the all-you-can-eat snacks. And it's all right here in St. John. So it's an amazing place to be.
Yeah, that's amazing. So you guys are definitely growing. This industry is definitely growing. But what would you say about job availability for students on here who are probably in school or high school and looking for places to go after they graduate, university or post-secondary? What would you say about the job availability for the future?
For sure. That's a great question. And I think a timely question, because unfortunately, when you look at social media or the news lately, you see big headlines, Google has laid off 13,000 employees and Shopify, and the list goes on and on and on. And so the sentiment tends to be, the entire tech industry is just going under and there's no prospects for jobs. And, we were told to do this for such a long time and now we're not going to get a job. That is not the reality of every single market and every single situation. Yes, through COVID, of course, we had companies like Shopify that needed so many more people because so many more people were buying things online. People who hadn't bought online before were now going online, and we needed to build new structures, and a lot of stuff had to happen to make that happen. And naturally, now that we're kind of into the rhythm of what the new way of working and shopping is, then inevitably they don't need all the people that they needed before. Whereas then you see local companies like Misa or Verifin or Colab, and the list goes on, that are just beginning to ramp up. They're just beginning to hire more and more people. We're just beginning to make more new products. And so in that case, tons of optimism. But also I think an important point to make on that is the nature of how we work has changed so much over the past few years that we see people right here in St. John's holding jobs in tech companies and different types of STEM related roles across Canada and beyond. So there really are no borders anymore to the type of work that you want to do. If there's something you're really passionate about doing, something that you're good at doing, you can find a job. It might not be within your own city, might not even be in your own province. We've proven not even in your own country, and you make it work. It's the new normal for sure.
I completely agree. It's better to follow your passions and you let the work follow you.
That is exactly right.
Are there opportunities for remote work like you are speaking about at MISA?
Definitely. So we have employees, a couple employees in California, and in Vancouver and in Ontario. And so, for example, we have a VP who is living and working in Vancouver. He really likes to get up early in the morning and start work. Works perfectly for us. And then his day is done super early, has tons of passions. He loves to be out in nature and whatnot. And so he has the rest of the evening to himself. Again, we're the type of organization that I think embraced hybrid and flexible work well before it became the cool thing to do. And so leadership especially has always been really open to the fact that you get your work done. And as long as it's done, and as long as, you're still able to collaborate with those that you collaborate with and you communicate openly about that, it doesn't matter when it is, where it is. What matters is that we're producing what needs to be produced. And so tons of opportunity. We also take interns. I think this semester, we might even have 10 or 11. So there's great opportunities to explore.
Wow. Could you tell us a little bit about your work environment? Do you do more office work or field work, or what does a day in your work look like?
So my title, and I've always had these kind of elusive titles, but what I essentially do is I'm kind of like the right hand to the CEO. And what that means is that my role from day to day changes quite significantly. There's very little, I would say, that can be planned really well in advance beyond kind of some of the annual strategic planning work that I do. But I wouldn't say that I do field work either, because a lot of it is very kind of rooted in analysis and assessment and understanding opportunities and determining kind of the financial upside of those opportunities, looking at things like risks, working with our board, working with our leadership team to make sure that they're operating as effectively as possible. But it does give me really kind of broad exposure, and probably I know a little bit about enough to be dangerous. So I know little bits about all of the technical components. I know little bits about all the financial components. I know a little bit about selling online. I know a little bit about human resources, enough to ask the questions, but definitely not enough to kind of run either of those departments.
So you're sort of a jack of all trades at the company.
That is actually another conversation I had the other day, because my LinkedIn headline says that I'm a Swiss Army knife. And someone used that term to describe me probably 3 or 4 years ago, and I don't think I'll ever get rid of it. To me, it is a very accurate representation of not only my role, but the way that I think and operate in my personal life as well.
Yes, I can definitely tell from your description that that's a good title for you. Speaking in terms of jobs and work experience, how did you get to the position you're in now?
That's an interesting question, and something I probably should have mentioned before. So prior to joining MISA, I actually worked with Genesis, and Genesis is the tech incubator and accelerator that I guess related to Memorial University, but not wholly owned by Memorial University. And so in my role there, I worked with a whole portfolio of companies that were early stage tech startups that were looking to kind of scale and build momentum here and abroad. So Misa was actually a graduate of the Genesis Incubator Program. And I had been on a panel with Josh, one of the founders, a couple months prior to this role kind of being formed. I do a lot in the gender equity space, and he and I were on a panel together about sponsorship and allyship and mentorship in the tech industry. And so our paths had crossed quite a few times. He kind of knew of the diverse skill set that I had, and this role fit my experience and also my interests quite well. And so we had some great conversations. I got to chat with a number of other people at Misa as well, and I decided to leave my position at Genesis, but still stay so connected to Genesis through working with one of their graduate companies. And, you know, I still do a ton of work with them right now as well.
That's awesome. So in your position now, just speaking about you as an employee of Misa, do you see growth for yourself there, or is there any other career aspirations that you have?
Definite lots of growth at Misa. Joined at a very pivotal time where we had just gone through what's called a raise with our investors. So we had gone through a Series B raise at the time, which meant that we got millions of dollars that came into the company, all for the purpose of fulfilling our growth mission. So super exciting time. And we see a lot more opportunities for more raises for investment in the next coming years. A few of the growth opportunities I talked about, going international and selling new products and building more stuff. So I think my role will kind of naturally evolve as we go through that growth at Misa. But also outside of my work at Misa, I am an entrepreneur myself. Another great perk of working in a flexible environment is that, I'm able to sometimes at lunchtime hop on a mentorship call, or early in the morning chat with colleagues overseas. And I'm really passionate about gender equity. And so a lot of the work I do in my own kind of side hustle is in that realm. I see myself growing that way as well. I'm really looking to change the narrative for the women that come after me, and for the really young girls like my daughter, who's only 8.5 and already challenging the status quo.
That is amazing, and I definitely support that. I'm super passionate about gender equity as well. You've definitely had a lot of experience across a lot of different foundations and industries. So far in your career, what is an accomplishment that is most meaningful to you, or that you're very proud of?
So many to think of. But I would say right now, being able to take on a chair position with Women in Communication Technology was a big moment for me. And it's because, across Atlantic, we have so much power to work together. When we think about it, if you combine all of the Atlantic provinces, I think the stat is that we're still the size of maybe just Mississauga. And so, geographically, we're sometimes a little bit far apart, especially Newfoundland being an island. But together, if we bring all of those resources together and all of the kind of efforts that we're making to unleash the potential of women and get more women involved in traditionally male-dominated occupations and increase exposure in STEM-related careers. There's so many great people and great organizations, nonprofits doing work in this space in Atlantic Canada, and I really want to play an active role in bringing all of those together and making, really moving the dial. And so that one's a big accomplishment for me, and one that I'm really excited about right now.
Yes, you should be proud of that. That is a big accomplishment. Sort of the opposite of that question. What is an advancement, if there is any, that you would like to see for the rest of your career? It could be at MISA or personally, whatever you like.
Yeah, great question. What is an advancement? I'm really passionate, or really interested is probably a better word, in understanding more of kind of leadership development. I'd love to eventually, and maybe it's not until retirement, get into something like executive coaching, with a women focus, of course. I just a few months ago did an assessment. It's called the Standout Report. It's a free assessment. Actually, you can do it online on a website called marcusbuckingham.com, and it shows you what your strengths are, how you stand out from the crowd. And funny enough, just before getting on this recording, was printing my standout report because I love it so much. And it talks about how I'm a natural connector. I love bringing people and ideas together. I believe the concept, it's not 1 and 1 makes 2, it's 1 and 1 makes 3 or more. And I think I could really, take advantage of that in the future by bringing more people together, bringing more causes together, really bringing out the best in helping people identify and bring out the best in themselves. So I see that as somewhere along my journey for sure.
Yes, definitely. How has the pandemic affected the company, MISA?
I have to say, as I said before, we had been so kind of used to working hybrid and flexible before that part wasn't a jump for us at all. We had also been really, we started by just selling online. We were just an e-commerce company. So there was no transition to selling online at all. Perhaps, some of our retail sales might have dipped a little bit, but people were just as willing to go online and buy the products as well. Culturally, we have something really, really unique. And I often try to diagnose this because I think whatever it is we have going on needs to be replicated, and I need to find out what the formula is so I can share it elsewhere. But we have this a value in our culture called we before me. And what it means is that, obviously we're all working together. I'm going to help my colleague out as best as I can. And it's about the environment as well. And I think through the pandemic, we were really able to lean on that quite a bit. We did a lot of virtual meetups. We tried to send out care packages, all of those types of things that made people still feel connected to the company and to the culture. So I have to say, we were really lucky. And I hear that story quite a bit too. A lot of the newer companies who have already embraced this type of working environment really adapted quite well to the pandemic. For me, working from home is actually a really great thing, and I still do it quite often. I find myself more productive. I like to work early in the morning as well. And I like to work late at night, but around 3:30, 4 o'clock, I like to take a little bit of time with my daughter. So for me, it works really, really well. I can't imagine now going back to, a strict 9 to 5. I don't think that. Yeah, I'd probably need a little siesta in the middle of the afternoon.
That sort of environment definitely I could see would help throughout the pandemic. But what about your personal entrepreneurship? How did the pandemic affect you in that way?
Again, I feel that the pandemic shone so much light on the imbalance in gender equity, whether at home or at work, that it was a real light bulb moment for me personally and for the clients that I work with on that as well. There's studies out there to show that women were still doing 70% of the domestic care work at home while trying to balance working from home, while trying to balance homeschool. also with that came, the understanding that maybe we need to support mothers better in prepping for maternity leave, and maybe we need to push the dial more on men taking paternity leave. So it's for better or for worse, I think the awareness of gender inequity has become more and more heightened. And now I'm here to help people and companies and leaders understand what we can do to help solve that problem. I mean, I think right now the current stat is we're 132 years off. We can all work together to significantly cut that time down. That is just not acceptable.
No. And I think the sort of work environment that you're talking about is so inclusive to women, especially mothers. And I would like to ask, how has your experience as a woman working in STEM and as a female entrepreneur been? And you mentioned that MISA is founded by two brothers. So can we hear a little bit about your experience throughout your career so far?
For sure. At MISA, what I'll say is amazing. Our working parent benefits are second to none. We have, Women of MISA internal Slack channels. We have a parenting MISA group, employee resource group at MISA. We have extended maternity leave benefits. One of our co-founders just became a dad in December and took 12 weeks of paternity leave where he doesn't even have access to email. You do not hear of that in the industry. No. Not as a founder, not as a leader. We don't even see it, in other industries happen at the front line. And that, to me, was one of the most heartwarming moments, because the message that he sent to the rest of the staff to say, this is normal. You are a parent. You want to take time to spend with your children. I don't care if you're a man, woman, I don't care how you identify, you are entitled to that time. And I can only imagine how that's going to impact the new parents that come after him. So amazing. I won't say that that's been the case throughout my entire career. There is a reason I got into gender equity work, and I've always worked in male-dominated industries, and unfortunately, it always hasn't been that way. And so in my early 30s, late 20s, early 30s, I was doing a leadership development program because I was moving into executive roles. And I was actually given the book, Nice Girls Don't Get the Corner Office. I can't believe a book by that name is even published. But back then, over a decade ago, that was something that women were given if they wanted to move into leadership positions. And I was basically told, you're too nice. I was coached on the inflection in my voice. I was coached on being stern, and I went through the program and I did all of those things. I did my homework. I did as my coaches told me, to then get taken aside by one of my my other executive team members. And he told me, you know what, you're too intimidating. And I thought, this is the story of women in leadership. It's called a double bind. And what it means is that it's like the Goldilocks story, right? It's like a little bit too hot, a little bit too cold. You can't find the middle ground. It just doesn't exist. And so, that is another reason that I started doing the work that I do, because it's not fair. And I'm glad to see the dynamic changing. And I'm very happy to report I haven't seen an inkling of that at MISA. But we're lucky that's not the case all the time.
Yes, and hearing that, I can definitely tell why you're so passionate about it. And that is a frustrating situation, to be told that and then told you're too far gone the other way. It's difficult to deal with, especially in a workplace when you feel like you have to meet certain standards and all of that. But I love what you said about the founder taking time off from MISA. I think that's definitely setting healthy habits and patterns, not only in your company, but others. And hopefully that continues. I like to see that.
Definitely. Yeah, it was a big moment. And I think, that story's been shared quite widely right now because it is such an impactful move that he made.
Yeah, let alone from a man, but especially the founder. It's a big role to be taking time off of. So that says a lot.
Definitely.
Do you have any advice for the young women on here who might be pursuing careers in STEM or business relating to this, being a woman in a workplace?
Definitely. I would say be true to yourself, know your values, know what's important to you, and know that you are enough. You're going to have thoughts of, there's a term that gets thrown around called imposter syndrome, where you feel like, oh, well, there's only a couple of people who look like me in the room, or, men are usually seem to be better at these things, or they're more vocal, or they seem more confident. We have gender differences, and yes, sometimes men come across as being more confident. It does not mean that we're less qualified. There's a stat out there that says a man will apply for a job if he feels like he meets 60% of the criteria. Whereas for women, we have to know that we meet 100% of the criteria to apply for the role. Take the chance. You don't need to know 100%. The men have proven it. Just believe in the value that you bring and understand the value that you bring. And if you're true to yourself and you're able to bring your whole self into the role that you're going into, you will thrive. It's about having confidence in yourself for sure. And wanting to learn and wanting to grow and not ever wanting to feel like you know everything. Because if you know everything, how boring would that be? Ask the questions,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
I never want to be in a room where I'm the smartest person, or I feel like I know everything, because that would be boring. You want to learn from people, and you want to, continuously challenge yourself.
Yeah, that's great advice. And I recently heard the phrase risk for good, which kind of relates to what you're talking about. It seems scary in the moment, but the risk might benefit you in the long run. So yeah, I love to hear that.
Yeah.
Trina, could I maybe get you to share your screen to the entrepreneurial mindsets image? Because I think that you've spoken a lot about growth mindset and how important that is, especially in business, but at your company as well. So looking at this image here, there are a lot of things that are good assets for anyone, and especially women in STEM. But aside from the growth mindset, because I can tell that you're very passionate about that one, is there any other aspect here that you think is very helpful for specifically business and entrepreneurship?
Oh, I love all of these. I talked a lot about curiosity already as well, so I'm not going to focus on that one right now. What I will say is I like adaptability as well quite a bit. Things aren't always going to go as planned. You can, have the best intention to do something, but being able to be flexible and kind of bounce back up, that one ties into resilience and grit as well. Flexibility and resilience and grit really mean adaptability. And I think the more that you can embrace that, the more you'll actually learn from your mistakes, and the more that you will grow, and the more that you will be curious. So I think these all kind of tie in quite tightly together.
They do kind of all intertwine, but it's interesting to see them laid out like this and kind of put a name to the feeling.
Exactly. That is actually, that's a really good point as well. Naming your feelings is such an impactful and powerful tool because it helps you normalize it. So if you can say, you know what, I feel kind of like a little bit like an outsider here, or I feel like, oh, maybe I'm not good enough. When you say it, you're like, wait now, I've seen that somewhere. Someone's told me that that's not the case. Is this really a fact, or is this some story that I'm telling myself?
Yes, that also kind of goes hand in hand with that stat about women not applying for the job unless they have 100% of the qualifications. Because if you can kind of label that that's just fear, then you can kind of go back to these things and assure yourself that you do have what it takes to do that.
Exactly. That's a really insightful point.
Thanks. Trina, could you scroll down to the skills part? Yes. So we've spoken a lot about what's helpful and beneficial for your career, but I was wondering if there are any skills here that maybe you've struggled with or you had to put extra effort towards in order to be good at. This could be in university or in your career or personal life, but not everyone can be great at everything, so it's good to talk about the things we had to put extra effort in.
I was painfully shy as a young child. So when I saw public speaking, I even kind of like cringed a little bit when I thought about it. I was so painfully shy that it was hard for me to even talk to aunts and uncles, extended family members. The thought of even speaking out in the classroom, I went to a really small school. There were 14 people in my entire grade. And I was so afraid to even read a story out to my classmates. That's how shy and introverted I was. I had to work so hard to get over that. And the way that I actually started doing that was through speaking in a different language and public speaking in the different language. So I started doing French competitions because majority of people had no idea what I was talking about. So I would get up and I started kind of, winning local public speak offs, and then I would go in a bit bigger audiences. And then all of a sudden, I had zero fear with speaking publicly when it came to, speeches or whatnot in front of large audiences, but was still really, really fearful of contributing, let's say at a work team meeting or something like that. So I was still in my 20s and I was still afraid to speak up and ask a question or speak up and challenge something. And I really had to work at it. I had to be intentional. I had to go into meetings and say, I'm going to say something within the first 2 minutes, because if I don't, I'm not going to say it at all. And now for people who know me, I have the opposite problem. Sometimes you just need to realize to stop talking.
I would never have guessed that, but that just goes to show that you can't tell like how much people have had to work to get where they are. That's amazing. I never would have guessed that was the one you would pick.
Yeah, and I don't even mean just like a little bit. I mean painfully shy. So that one's really important for me to tell a story about for sure.
So you spoke about those French competitions helped you kind of get out of that issue. Was that as you were a kid or in university?
That was in junior high. So I started those probably even late elementary school. But I had, the first at least kind of 10, 11, 12 years of my life just so ridiculously shy. But then, like I said, I mean, I could get up and do those things and not really think twice about it. But in my 20s, being part of the workforce and still feeling apprehensive to talk out amongst the crowd. I remember one of my early bosses telling me that I thought to speak instead of speaking to think. And so what it basically meant was, sometimes you can just talk things out instead, and you'll still kind of, you'll gain your credibility and whatnot that way. I think the whole idea of introversion is appreciated more now, though. It's written about more, people talk about it more, that forcing people sometimes to speak more isn't necessarily the right thing to do. There's other avenues to allowing people to get their opinions and thoughts across. But I guess all of that to say my whole fear over public speaking or speaking in small groups or big groups has completely vanished.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting though, how French competitions could help you get out of that.
Yeah.
Also about those skills there, is there anything that you would say is a strength for anyone who's looking to go into business, or even if it isn't a natural strength, is something they should work on?
Problem solving is always top of mind for me. If you can develop strong problem solving skills, and that doesn't necessarily mean, solving a big problem like, I don't know, we don't know what our next product is going to be. It could be something really minuscule, but if you're able to go to people with problems, but already have a possible solution in your back pocket, you're going to gain so much credibility. Leaders these days have so much on their plates that sometimes just going to them with another problem can be frustrating. If you can at least think through what some alternative courses of action might be and propose a couple of them as options, it just takes the burden off of the leader's shoulders and just shows that you have the initiative, you have the creativity, you have that kind of deeper analytical thinking ability.
I love that you said initiative, because I definitely think some people think that they, in a team setting, need to be the leader, or that they don't know how to be like a helpful just member. And I think initiative is a huge part of that. Just going and doing things, trying things without looking for approval on every little, like taking the first step to do things yourself. Yes. For all the members on here and anyone watching live, I'm going to put the gamification code up now, which is Women in Business. So you can add this into the clubhouse for points. There you go. Okay. And is there any final pieces of advice that you have for me or the other students on here, or anything that you'd like to touch on that you didn't get a chance to yet?
Yeah, I would say this is a great first step, doing what you can to learn more about the all STEM related industries, coming together as a group of people to support one another. Continue to do that. Continue to network. Continue to get out, meet people, listen to unique stories, understand that there's not always just one path to get to where you want to go, and it's not always linear. And so, like I said, when I was back in my high school, junior high days, I never thought that I would be part of a tech company. I didn't think I was ever going to work in any sort of technical related field. And although I'm not, technically trained, theoretically, I'm not a software developer or an engineer or a mathematician or any of those things, I'm still an active part of the tech industry. So there's more than one path. And I think learning more about those and asking the questions is so important. You have so many tools available these days to network and to meet new people and to kind of be curious and explore. So use them as much as you possibly can. I'm always here to answer questions. Feel free to, connect with me over email, or if you use a platform like LinkedIn or even other social media, feel free to connect up, because I'm always happy to share my words and my connections with those that are ambitious and kind of looking to inspire the next generation of girls and women leaders, for sure.
I totally agree. Even from my perspective of a high school student, I think a lot of people, and adults especially, think you need to have it all figured out and have all the steps in place and ready to go. But even looking at you, the fact that you were so afraid of public speaking, you in junior high never would have predicted where you are now. So that just goes to show for the rest of us that we don't need to be able to visualize ourselves in 10 or 15 years, because we just got to take it one step at a time, have initiative, all of those skills we talked about, and things will work out.
Exactly. Just be confident, realize the value that you bring, and that's worth its weight in gold.
Yes, it was lovely to meet you, and thank you for everything you've said. This is great advice, and you've been a great resource for everyone on here.
Likewise, thank you so much. I'm so honored to be here to chat in front of everyone today. And like I said, always happy to continue the conversation.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening, everybody, and see you.
Bye-bye.